Why is the second law true? It's just because of this. Genesis 3. Cursed is the ground for your sake. Talking about man. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Romans 8 again. For the creation itself was subjected to futility, not willingly. Did the universe want to be created, subjected to this law? No. But because of him who subjected it, God, in hope for the future, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains together until now. The second law is the law of the fall and the curse, and it's tied to a historical event. I want you to get this, if you can, picture in your mind. The first law, conservation of all the matter and energy, ends on the sixth day. It's tied to historical events in Genesis 1 and 2. The second law, from which we get all the rest of our laws of science, comes from an historical event in Genesis 3, the sin of man. Do you know why that's so ironic? What part of scriptures do they laugh at as being historically and scientifically incorrect? Genesis 1 through 3. It has no history in the minds of the naturalists, and is scientifically absurd. And yet God has planted the laws that we get all of our science from in these two chapters and tie it to historical events that they say are impossible to take place. Do you see the irony here? God's clever. And if people only understood, they could understand science. And we'll explain later in another session how important these laws are and how powerful they are, and how modern naturalism and our educational system is going backwards in its ability to solve problems because they've turned away from the knowledge of these laws. They got chaos in the way they teach it. You have to be a genius to get through the teaching of science today. But if you work with these laws and knew them and where they come from, you can work miracles in the world of science. But this second law comes from this historical event of the fall of man and the breaking of God's relationship and maintenance of the universe. Let's look, though, to the future. I don't want you to dwell on this tragedy that we're caught into today. We're all going to die unless the Lord returns, and everything's going bad. And all you have to do is read the news. What's the news made out of at 10 o'clock? It's death, tornadoes, people shooting each other. And what do people use? Why do they what is death about if it's unnatural? It's the shedding of blood, almost invariably. It's a knife through you or a gun through you or an automobile accident or something. And that's what makes up our news. But let's not look to that. Let's look to the future. Release of the creation from the curse, the end of the second law of science. Romans 8:19. For the earnest expectation of creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the children of the sons of God, because the creation itself will also be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. Destruction of the present universe. The present earth, heaven and earth will be destroyed by fire because it's contaminated with sin and it will have to be redone. This is in 2 Peter 3. 2 Peter 3, verse 7. But the heavens and the earth, which are now preserved by the same word, talking about the word of God, are reserved for fire until the day of judgment. But verse 10, but the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with great noise, and the elements, the very elements, atoms, will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in will be burned up. The heavens, in verse 12, the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will burn with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works therein will be burned up. This is a picture of the sun. It's the closest I could get to what it's going to be about. And this thing is boiling. They say it's at 10 to 50 million degrees on the inside. The surface alone is at 6,000 degrees centigrade, and the upper atmosphere of it is 1,000,000 degrees. Everything's consumed there. There's another one, a close shot. I use this because it says the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. I don't know if you know it, but atoms have a nucleus. All atoms that are in the universe, you're all made out of atoms. That nucleus is made out of protons. Those protons want to blow the nucleus apart. They're pushing against each other with tremendous forces. And they've created a deal they call the strong nuclear force to hold this together. Well, there's no experimental basis for the thing. You don't even know where it is. There's nothing tied up in nature that gives you this strong nuclear force. They just know that something is keeping those protons from blowing that thing apart. And there's some question. It says, for instance, of Christ in Colossians, in him all things consist or are held together. And what happens, does it say here, the elements will burn with fervent heat? You know what happens when you release that nucleus? That thing turns into nuclear power. That's what those bombs are about, fission. The thing's coming unglued. And it doesn't take much of it. There's probably enough energy in each person here to blow up the United States if you're turned into atomic weapon. That's how much is in each one of us. But you can imagine if the whole universe, he releases that and the thing comes unglued. There won't be just a noise, it's a big noise. And it won't be just a small fire, the whole thing will go off. The destruction of the universe, it called to holiness for the new earth. This is also in 2 Peter 3:11. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, in other words, the whole natural realm, what manner of persons ought you to be in conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of the Lord, because the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Let me give you a small example of this. We have what we call novas, and then we have supernovas. And about every 2 or 3 days, there's a nova going off. It's one of the stars blowing up. Supernovas are either big stars or whole galaxies, we're not exactly sure, going off. That gives you a small idea of what's going to happen. In a small basis, we can see this happening. But he says, what manner of life ought we to be in light of the fact that all we have is going up in fire, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of the God, because the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will burn with fervent heat. Nevertheless, this is verse 13, we, according to his promise, look for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. In other words, sin's done away with. And we look for that. Therefore, since all these things are dissolved, what manner of persons ought we to be in holy conduct and godliness? I chose a picture of the past. You know who this is? Noah. And how long do you think it took him to build that thing? Ark. It's over 100 years. Noah is called in the scriptures a preacher of righteousness. Did he warn the people ahead of what was coming? Yes. Did he live a godly life? Yes. Was everyone else ungodly? Yes. Was God going to destroy the world? Sure he was. There are only going to be 8 people that survive this. And Noah, he continues in a godly life and explains to the people, he preached to them, saying, change your ways. This lies ahead. And in the same way, Peter uses that as an exact example, that they ignore what's coming ahead. And he says, but have this hope, Peter says, because this is going to change. But in the meantime, in light of that, why do you hold on to these things? This universe that you've got, that you can put your hands on, is disappearing. You'll not take any of it past the grave with you, plus you won't have anything in the future, even if you came back. What manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness? This is Norman Rockwell. And look at this. This is a grandmother and her grandson, sitting there praying, thanking the Lord for their food in a restaurant across from 2 guys who they're a curiosity for. Did they pray for their food? No. They're puffing on their cigarettes, looking at the grandmother and her son. Look at this guy, he's looking at them too. But did it change her conduct or her grandson's conduct? No. They're thanking God. The others could care less. New heavens and new earth in which righteousness dwells. This is just an ancient drawing of what the new heavens and the new earth would be like. This is a more recent one. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and earth in which righteousness dwells, returning to an even better situation than the Garden of Eden before. And this goes back to Daniel 12. And many who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, coming out of the tombs, like they did. What happened after the death of Christ? When the veil was rent, the tombs opened up. And then after his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and walked around and were talked to many. We already have cases in history what this is going to be like. But Daniel says in the future, those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. And many who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to what? Everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Everyone lives forever. We all come back. But it's not to the world we left. And then it's not to the destinies that we share here. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. I, John, this is in the Revelation, saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming out of heaven from God. No more curse in the New Jerusalem. It's the end of the second law of science. Revelation 22, 3 and 5. And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. They shall see his face, and his name shall be on their foreheads. There shall be no night there. They shall need no lamp nor light of the sun, for the Lord God shall give them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. This is a rendition. It's not a very good one, but it's the best I could do. There shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. These are supposed to be the cherubim. The myriads of myriads about. But the tabernacle of God is with his people, and he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people. And God himself shall be with them and will be their God, returning to what? Better than the Garden of Eden. Walking and talking relationship. No barrier of sin. And last one, I like this one. And it says in Revelation 21:4, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. 10,000 years from now, will we remember the hardships and the bitterness, the sorrows? No. The curse will be lifted and we'll live forever in a paradise that God has prepared for us. It says, it has not entered the heart of man the things that God has prepared for those who love him.